Welcome to the 2022 Jacksonville Jaguars schedule release breakdown. Brian Sexton, John Oesher, Ashlyn Sullivan, and JP Shadrick will take you through the 2022 schedule of your Jacksonville Jaguars week by week, team by team. And now, to get things started, here's JP Shadrick.
And welcome into the 2022 schedule release presented by Dreamfinders Homes. Full team coverage of the Jaguars 2022 schedule. I think we're all ready to see what's going to happen, right, Ashlyn?
I've never seen quite an event like this. Every year it gets a little more extravagant, and now we're having schedule leaks right before the schedule comes out, and you can just wait a couple hours, and then the schedule will be here. So, yeah, let's just do it.
They're going to play 17 of these games.
I've heard that.
It's just a matter of what order, John.
Yeah, and it's I think it's a tricky schedule. I'm glad it's finally out, as Ashlyn alluded to. Let's get to it.
All right, let's start off. Jaguars will have 4 preseason games this year. The Raiders, and then home against the Browns and Steelers, at the Falcons to wrap up the preseason. But let's get to the regular season and start it off with Week 1. The Jaguars are in Washington September 11th against the Commanders and Carson Wentz. Then it's home against the Indianapolis Colts. The Jags have won 7 straight home games against Indy. One of those was in London. At the Chargers, and then at the Eagles in the Doug Peterson Bowl. What a game that should be, Brian.
I'm going to tell you, when you look at those 4 teams, go look at the depth chart on their defensive line. A storyline for the entire summer is going to be the Jaguars' offensive line, retooled to some degree. They're going to be tested in the first month. Those are excellent defensive lines.
Yeah, they are, and I think the schedule is tough for multiple reasons. One is, this part is not completely unnavigable because you've played the Colts well, the Commanders, but you're 3 of 4 on the road to start. So not doing them any favors, NFL schedule maker.
Yeah, and you're on the road a lot the first month. Then you go to the Chargers. Week 3 in California has not been kind to the Jaguars. I have it here: 5 straight losses to the Chargers on the road and 3 straight losses to the Washington football team. Now Commanders on the road. So they haven't fared well in the past, but you go look at those stats and you can't really say that because this team is so different than what it was in the past.
Let's move along now to the second quarter of the season. The Jags back home against the division rival Houston Texans, and then at Indianapolis, back-to-back division games. The Giants come to Jacksonville in Week 7, October 23rd, and then the Jaguars head to London, Wembley Stadium, to host the Denver Broncos, John.
Very interesting, to me anyway, schedule nerd. The Week 6 game against the Colts means they're done with the Colts at that point. Only one other time in franchise history, 2000, against the Baltimore Ravens, have they been done with the division opponent that early. Ravens won the Super Bowl that year. I don't know what that means.
Gosh,
Wow.
That's not a good stat.
Well, yeah.
Are you calling it again?
No, I'm not calling it.
Okay,
I'm just saying
sure.
It's unusually early
Yeah.
to be done with the division opponent.
I think Week 8 stands out, and that's because the Denver Broncos, you look at them totally different than you did a year ago, Russell Wilson versus Trevor Lawrence. But it's an incredible advantage that the Jaguars have played in London 9 times. The Broncos have never played in London, and we have seen that be a huge advantage before.
This is this front end of 4 out of 5 at home, Brian.
Yeah, 3 of the first 6 against the division is what stands out to me at this point. You're getting an early read on a division. We've talked about the quarterbacks in this division, and these division teams are not so far out in front of the Jaguars that you couldn't make some hay early and put it up in the barn before you get to midseason.
And out of that brutal, I think, road stretch to start, the 2 home games are in the division.
They are, indeed. Let's move along now. The Jaguars continue their tour of the AFC West. The Raiders come to Jacksonville in Week 9. Then the Jags are in Arrowhead against the Chiefs, a bye week in Week 11 this year, so 2 games in a row after the London game before the bye week. Then the Ravens come to town, and then it's off to Detroit to face the Lions. Ashlyn?
Week 10 is what stands out here, and that's just a brutal stretch of very competitive offensive teams. I go back to 2018 when the Jaguars traveled to Kansas City. I'll never forget that game because it was so loud, and that is when that season fell apart in Kansas City. That's a really tough place to play.
Well, you look at this, and to me, happy November, right? All 3 teams either made the playoffs. I consider the Ravens a playoff team because I think they'll be back in the playoffs this year. Thank goodness for a bye, Brian.
Yeah, this is the challenging meat of the schedule, and November, as we all know, is when playoff teams move forward and pretenders fall backwards. The quarterbacks stand out. Carr with Devontae Adams this year, I expect him to take a major leap forward. And then you get Mahomes, and then you get Lamar Jackson. we're going to see where that defense is midseason.
Yeah, that Ravens game on Thanksgiving weekend is really when things can turn the right or wrong way for a team. We continue with the final stretch of the season now. December 11th, the Jaguars head to Nashville. They haven't won there since 2013. The Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott coming to town the next week, week 15, at the Jets. That's a Thursday night game the week of Christmas. Thursday night football on Prime Video. And then January 1st at Houston, and either January 7th or 8th against the Tennessee Titans here in Jacksonville, Brian.
I would love to see this team be in a position where those 2 games at the end of the year really mean something, right? You start with 3 of the first 6 in the division. You finish with 3 of the last 5 in the division. We're going to know about this team and where they stand, before that point. But it sure would be nice to be able to point to those 2 games.
Yeah, maybe I'm being the pessimist here. I think each of these sections is tough for different reasons. The Jaguars play 3 games against teams that won the division last year. They're all 3 in the last 5 games, Dallas and Tennessee. So there's a couple in there against 4-win teams, the Jets and the Texans. Better get those because they're 3 are tough.
But you realize they haven't beaten the Texans since 2017.
Right, which is crazy. And you got to take, I don't want to call them the layups, but the wins that you have to have when you have the Titans week 14 and week 18. And we remember those December games in Nashville when you're asking, get the plane started, let's go home. You hope that's not the case, but there are really bad memories in Nashville in December for the Jaguars.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. Would not like to do that again. Hey, how are we feeling overall? 17-0? What do you think, John?
No, I think it's tough. I think, again, when you're 4-13 and 1-15 back to back, I think any schedule is going to look tough because those memories are sort of scarred into it. There are games you can get. I think the Jaguars are going to push for 500. I think the road at the beginning and road at the end stuff, along with that 3 in November, I think it's a tough schedule.
I think by the time you get to that November stretch that we're talking about, you have to be 500 at that point to stay competitive. If you're behind, then head to November and you are on a losing streak, big trouble, I think, in November.
I think they can approach 500. I think they can be 8-9, or they could be 9-8 if they stay healthy. I mean, if Trevor Lawrence is upright at the end of the year and Christian Kirk is having a good season, I mean, I could see them pushing. To have a competent, a quality coaching staff is all the difference this year.
And to Slynn's point, I believe it's out of the first 8 or 9 games, and I can't remember exactly, 1 playoff team. Mm-hmm. Now, the Colts are in there, and I think they're a playoff team. They would have been had the Jags not beat them. Mm-hmm. But that first 8 or 9 games, not completely as overloaded as maybe the last 8.
There you have it. The schedule has been released. Tickets on sale now for the 2022 Jaguars season. That will do it for our coverage on Jaguars.com of the 2022 schedule release presented by Dreamfinders Homes.